Hola community, how is it going? This is Blender.Today live number 62. We're live from the Blender Animation Studio slash Blender Institute slash Foundation slash the whole building here in Amsterdam. It's 5 p.m. We're transmitting live, so please ask your questions in Blender.Today. You'll find a thread where you can ask there, and we'll try to answer them towards the end of the show because there's so many things this week. There's been improvements in the user interface, in the outliner, in the animation department. People often say that the animation side is left apart, but actually there are improvements. But often I'm not like the best person to show them, but some of them are like in some constraints, and so don't worry, there are improvements. So it's everything okay? All the sound and the video and the stuff, it's fine. I just came back from the barber. I am looking super sharp for this, just for you. But the list today, the list that I have of things to show you, like, look, here's a sneak peek of what I prepared for today. It's like insane. So let's get to it right away. First, not the Blender like news as in the Blender software, but upcoming news of what will be eventually, hopefully, if the students of the Blender of the Google Summit of Code are good boys and they deliver like they did in the previous years. The Blender Foundation has been accepted, and there is I believe it's 8 projects that are gonna be part of the Google Summit of Code projects. Just to go fast on it, through it is bevel custom profiles. So for beveling, for modeling, that's awesome. Next, Julian Eisel, core support of virtual reality headset through OpenEXR. So the VR world is very hip nowadays, and it's even getting more, especially since many companies are investing in it. There is Oculus. There's also the one that got me excited is the Valve Index. Valve Index, and it's not that I'm doing advertising or not, it's just that they're gonna support Linux from day one, so that's why I love them. Yes. So all the VR handling of the input and the viewport itself and performance is gonna be improved by Julian Eisel. He is a developer that has been working on Blender for a while now. There are many good things in Blender thanks to him, so it's in good hands. Then Omar Ahmad is gonna take and it's gonna improve cycles and Eevee for procedural content creation. So to improve the workflow for technical shading artists with adding a bunch of nodes and dynamic socket hiding for nodes. That will be super interesting. And yes, just you can read the whole description. Outliner improvements by Nathan Craddock. There's already many patches on this regard, so I don't know exactly what's going to cover for this particular project. But Yiming Wu, last year, he had so many good demos of the line PR engine for Blender, the one that draws lines on top of the viewport, basically, so you can have very nice line detection. So it's like freestyle, but it's not freestyle, and it's super awesome. It can work together with freestyle. Then cloud simulation improvements, always welcome. And then Intel Embry VVH for GPU. So basically speed goodies. So super exciting times. Let's see what comes soon enough. The Google Summit of Code in the past has brought us like Sergey, for example, Sergey Sharvin, the developer that now is handling like half of the code in Blender. He came from one of these projects, so it actually sometimes it works out really well. So for new developers to get involved, and for existing developers to improve their current workflows, tools. Exactly. Yes. So much love in the here. Awesome. In the chat. All right. Let's get to it. So I'm gonna size this properly, and let's go first, like we always do, through the user interface improvements, and then some outliner. There has been like improvements in cycles and Eevee it was just committed like 4 minutes before I think this version of Blender that I opened didn't have it, so I have to close this one and open it again because I compiled and it has the new settings. So let's get through it. So I have here my list. Let's see. So first, the bigger one, the one that you will probably notice as soon as you open Blender, is the animation editors now have these, the top, like the scrubbing area now is at the top, so all the keyframes and everything, it's up there. It's also an area where you can just click and drag. So if you're with a tablet, it's very handy, or also if you're using the left click select, so you also find it very, very handy. It's a change that affects all the animation editors and the sequencer. So if you're in the video editing world sequencer, then you can see it. So it looks much more like any other software. There also has been a few improvements in how it looks. It looks much nicer now, thanks to one of the developers that takes care of all these small details everywhere. The other change in the animation editors is that for example, when you have, let's open an actual animation file from here, from Caminandes 3. So if I'm in the graph editor, you're gonna see it. That, I see okay, the scroll bars were on the right. Now they're on the left. This must be something wrong. Let's open a new file. If that's the case, or here. Wow. That's interesting. That file that I opened is from 2007, who knows, it's super old. And it had the scroll bars on the left side. But the new, or like from now on, when you work on it, they're gonna appear on the right. Actually, they appearing on the left wasn't really, didn't make any sense, because everywhere in Blender you have the scroll bars on the right side. Everywhere, even like in the text editor, in the everywhere, except in the the graph editor had them on the left. Also, they were overlapping with the numbers. Now they got split. Now you only have the numbers on the left, which are still useful. There were some suggestions to put them on the right side, but I believe they are more handy on the left, because sometimes you have like drivers or like you're zoomed in and you want to see the numbers there. So that is pretty neat as well. Then the markers, now the marker line, when you have one, they always show up by default. In the previous versions, you have to go to the view menu and enable show marker lines, but now they're enabled by default, because without them they don't really the markers are at the bottom and the frame numbers are on the top. So without them, it's hard to keep track, especially if you have like a large animation editor. The background color of the scrubbing area is called scrubbing area region. It's you can change it from the theme settings on graph editor, or on any editor has its own. It's called scrubbing markers region, because it also affects the one underneath. So you can make it pink, of course, and it will affect both top and bottom to save some of the properties settings. So how is everything? Is everything okay? So much love. 600 people watching. Okay, not nervous at all. All right, more UI, more interface changes. Last week I showed the how the settings and of your active tool, especially brushes, for example, when you're working on vertex paint, weight paint, any paint, grease pencil, they would show on the top bar. But if you have the top bar hidden, you will also have them in here in the tool settings. But sometimes it wasn't very very handy. What if you want to use like full screen, like complete full screen, and just no distraction, you turn off your phone, it's late at night, you just put some music and you work? Well, you can still enable with T, you can still enable the sidebar, and then with N, there are the 3 categories which I explained last week, but now the tool area also shows the settings for the active brush. So you can have very handy things, for example, like the intopo. You can put the intopo all the way here. If you use it all the time, this one we can hide it, we can put it there. Then the brush, for example, the textures, you can do pretty much everything from here now, full screen, without anybody bothering you, except your cat if you have one. Then that's quite of a big change, but yeah, it means in a way that now you can have these settings here and also here, which is duplicate. But okay, if you have both, then you have to, I would rather pick one, but I think it's nicer for some settings to have closer to the viewport. Some of them you don't need, especially if you're like modeling, you don't need them to be all the way there on the, for example, on here on the left side. If you're changing some of these settings, you can change them from here, but it actually makes things a bit easier that it's closer to the viewport. All right, next, more user interface stuff. The sidebar icons, these icons now, that's a small thing, but now they also get dimmed when you are before they used to have like a bright color always 100%, and that was a bit too strong and made like the icons scream at you. So now we're tweaking the colors and also make them a bit dimmer if they're not active. These buttons up here, they also got a category, so they are white by default, but if you want to change them in your theme, previously they will have the text color, and now you can change it from the user interface section in the theme settings, icon colors, and then you can change here scene. So right now it's almost white, but you can make it pink, of course, and that's a small addition, but it helps to keep things very nice, customizable. Then another setting that you're gonna find here is the icon border, which is basically a outline, a dark outline around your icons. So if you have in 0, then you see it's pretty clear. If you have 1, you will see that there is a dark outline. I don't know if you get to see it. Let me make this bigger. So here, for example, do you get to see the outline around the let's make it 2. Did you know that this slider goes up to 2, but actually you can click and press 4 and you can get a very useful 4 times as big interface. But hey, it's possible, right? Try doing this with a regular interface in other softwares. So anyway, you can see the colors and you can see the outline there, and then you can see how at this size the icon's resolution doesn't hold up. So let's go back to regular 1.2 resolution. There you go. So pretty neat. This setting, the outline setting, is off for the dark theme because it helps in a way, but also makes them a bit fuzzy. But where they really shine or stand out, it's with the dark theme. So if you enable the light theme. So if you enable the light theme, now you'll see that there is an outline around them. So here, icon colors, and if you make it 1, you see they're around. So they're like, you can actually see the colors even if we have a bright background. So more options. Okay, since we are here in the preference, now I'm gonna leave this for later because more of a like experience. But let's continue with the interface because there has been many changes. So I'm gonna close this guy, and I want my I saved the settings. Okay. The settings got saved automatically because that's a new setting that it's being worked on. So it's not the final look of it. But since I'm here, I'm gonna explain it, and since I was a victim of it, it's let's explain it. So and I'm blown out actually. There is a car in front of me actually. Suddenly I was bright. There is a car reflecting the light. So User preferences. Forever, Blender had a very weird way of dealing with user preferences. For example, the dark theme, right? I love the dark theme. Okay, here. The dark 4 is the theme I'm working on. It's some tweaks to the default theme to replace the default theme. It's just a few tweaks, but it's a work in progress. So yeah, Blender back. I don't know if you remember, probably the older generations are gonna remember when in Blender, to save your settings, it will always save your like startup.blend always. So if you wanted to change like the size or like the splash screen and then you save, it will save everything that you had in, like your startup.blend, your objects, everything. Some years ago that got split in two parts. Now you can save the user preferences and the startup file as two separate things, which is very nice because you can change these few options, save, and it's not gonna take on when it's shown when you open Blender the next time. So now there has been another round of updates in the preferences department, where you can now finally save your preferences, revert your preferences, which means that they're gonna go back to whatever it was set when you before the last time you saved them. So for example, if I go back to dark and I save, and then I change, I enabled these two options, Python tooltips, developer extras, and then I revert, it's gonna remove those settings that changed. But if I save and then change something, revert's gonna revert to that one. So it works pretty much like other more regular software. So it's pretty nice. The other option that was added finally is to revert to factory preferences. So it's like a factory startup, but only takes the preferences. So if you have a scene, in Blender until recently, the only way to like recover user preferences will also take over your startup.blend. Now you can actually revert to factory preferences, and it only takes those settings. It doesn't override your scene, which is so nice finally. And the last setting that it's enabled by default is here, but it might be moved to like save and load. It's put here for now. Is the save on exit. So when you make a change and you quit Blender, those settings are going to be saved, so you don't have to save them. The settings that are going to be saved, this change was mainly done for so many people asking about the quick favorites. So if you are not familiar with it, the quick favorites is the Q key that you can shovel any kinds of settings, and there is an updates in this department, by the way, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. Is you can, for example, add the something very useful. Let's see something useful like the render engine. If you change the render engine all the time, so you can right click and no, that's another feature. That's a sign shortcut. Rewind. The operators that you can change, you can add to the quick favorite menu. So for example, if you add a camera a lot, or a light a lot, then you can add them to quick favorites, and when you press Q, it's going to show up there, and you can like really easily do stuff and change stuff. I use it on the shading editor a lot to add my own nodes. So if I am, for example, tweaking a shader, and I use the node, for example, for RGB curves, I use it all the time, or a color ramp. So right click, add to quick favorites, and then I would have it here on the Q menu. It's very handy, but the settings that the settings of your quick favorites, they are part of your preferences, because if they will be saved on the blend file, then when somebody shares a blend file with you, then it will come with their quick favorites, and that's not really nice, right? Quick favorites are your own crafted, so hard-earned list of things you use most often. The downside was that you had to save your preferences. You have to, every time you add a new quick favorite, you'll have to go and save preferences. Now with the save on exit on, you don't have to. It will be saved automatically when you quit Blender. So very, very nice. 720 people, gee. All right, let's continue. So since I just showed that feature by mistake, is that it's regarding user experience, not only user UI, but also UX. Why? Because the the shortcut in Blender, they can assign shortcuts to pretty much anything except, until last week, except booleans and menus like drop downs. But now, thanks to Sebastian, who was here last week and is not here anymore, he left us this very nice gift that you can now add pretty much anything a shortcut, especially like things. So the demo that I was doing before is like with the render engine, which is like you're not going to change it that often, I guess. But if you do, you can right click, assign a shortcut, and let's press, I don't know, V. So now I can just quickly access, and that's awesome. I can remove the shortcut. I can assign it to anything. For example, if I'm editing and I change the let's say I change the here what options, X meter, for example. If I change X meter all the time, I was looking for that one, actually I couldn't find it. It's in the options. So if I enable X meter all the time, I can just assign a shortcut, because even though it's a toggle, now I can toggle it on and off. Oh, it's taken by another key, so I should be able to remove it and then assign it from remove it from the rip selected. Maybe it should take, should be all right when you, but it should warn you. It should tell you like, hey guys, you're careful, this setting is being changed by the whatever setting, so that way you know what you're overriding. But say for example you change the shadows all the time, or the world settings, or anything, you can just right click, assign shortcut, and this one should work. Or crash, shading context, invalid syntax. Oh yeah, there was an API change recently in the context, so this demo is falling apart. But basically you can add anything, any setting, any pretty much. Let's see this one. Let's remove the shortcut from here, from cavity, because it's messing up my stuff. And it's also changing the shading. Yes, there was an API change. This is when you compile right before starting a live stream, and don't drink and drive, don't compile and live stream. But yeah, basically you can add shortcuts to pretty much anything. You can add pretty much anything to the quick favorites menu, so more customization is always good. Then let's move on to more updates. The NLA, the sequencer and animation editors now have their own context menu. So if you're editing a video and you have a bunch of, say, a few strips, you can right click and, for example, perform actions. The context menu has been added also to the NLA, and it's a bit more consistent between all the editors. So I think that's pretty much it. Oh, and this one, speaking of the key map, now in the here in the, for example, that's why I'm confused, because I reverted the settings and I'm using left click select, the inferior left click select. So I'm gonna go back to my own, but I'm a right click select user. Represent. The new feature that I wanted to show is that you can now click and drag in empty areas in the sequencer to select the strips, to box select. So it works pretty much like in the viewport, where you can also like click and drag in an empty area to select. It also works in the, let's see, so let's go back to, I want to go back to my own settings. All right, there, I think. No. Okay, this is affecting my here, input, key map, right click select, please. The other editor where you can click and drag to box select is the animation editors. So if you are, for example, editing a animation from your llamas and your penguins, you can now click and drag to box select. I'm now right clicking to click to box select, but because I'm in right click select, but if you're in left click select, you can left click and drag. So how is it? Is everything okay? I'm missing a few comments here because I'm all by myself in this empty place. So more improvements. So these are small ones, but the graph editor, when you're actually changing the drivers editor is not called the graph editor, but for example, the drivers editor now it's also gonna be a bit smarter. It's not gonna show the markers and things that you don't need, so it's a bit more cleaned. The okay, this is a big one. Remember the balls incident we had last week about, yes, about the okay, I need to change this to cycles or something so I can actually see it. But the spheres that appear here in the look dev mode, they are in the overlays. They are now here. Look the preview. These ones now they're called preview and they are called spheres internally. So when you click on it, it's gonna show spheres and it's not gonna say balls. So thanks for your feedback, people. We take it very seriously. So that was a fast change. Then improvements in oh, this one is a very nice by the community, the user that I want to remember his name, Alessio Monti di Sopra, made it so now when you are moving the sphere, not the ball, in the normal node, this little sphere, or not in the node, but in anywhere where you have this setting, for example, in the shadows, we have this one. You can now right click or escape while you're transforming it so you don't mess up your transformation. That was a bug mainly, but thank you, Alessio, for looking into it and providing a fix. And now you are part of Blender 2.8 and beyond. Forever. Blender forever. The color ramps now, like the sides of the color ramps now, they don't overlap the scroll bars. So that's another fix in the UI. And this is a fix that actually maybe you didn't notice, but it was fairly big. The volume panel in Eevee wasn't showing up. So if you were using Eevee and you were in the world settings, the volume panel wasn't showing up. So you had to do everything from the shading editor. So now they shows up. So now it looks a little bit more cycles. And this is my segue to the new cycles plus Eevee marriage. I don't know how you call it. Can they get married? Can CG stuff get married? Yes, software. So Cycles is a standalone renderer, but its main user is Blender, right? And Eevee is 100% Blender. So now both of them, so it makes sense for them to share some settings, right? To share the way, like if you light something in Cycles, then it should match in Eevee. So this is a pretty recent, like very, very recent change. Like I can show you the commit here. It's from today, and it was committed, yeah, an hour, 4 minutes before. It's 1 hour difference, so it was 4 minutes before. So basically what it does is that now the strength and the color of the intensity of the light and the color of the lamps in Eevee and Cycles will match. So if you have a lamp with 1000 watts in render, these, when I change to Cycles, they should match, and they do, they match. Bam, magic. So how is this achieved? There is a new setting in cycles that will that is like outside of the node system. So you don't need a node system for unless you want like advanced stuff. But the color and the intensity of the lamp, it's controlled outside of the node system, just like the size of the lamp and pretty much everything. So if I go back to Eevee, it matches. Well, it's very hard to see, but it matches. So that is pretty nice. Finally, some conversion here. Then another way to another way that Eevee and cycles now are working better together is that the color space of the images is now coming from the image itself. So it's no longer in the node somewhere. It's part of the image. So that means that you can, like both Eevee and cycles are going to share that color space. So you don't have to change it twice, which is always welcome. Less work, maximum impact. You can read more about that, by the way, in the commit logs, and you can find it. It's a very nice, quite long thread, but if you want to read more, you can go to the differential 4807. Very easy to remember. Just pause the video and go. And last but not least, this is a major change that will save you some extra nodes. It will make your node system lighter and brighter. Is that the principal BSDF node was missing to my, well, I think it was missing two very essential settings that were like you always have to add them. For example, if you want some emission, which is not very PBR-ish, but if you want to have emission, then you would have to add an extra node and then combine the two. Now you can just change the emission of a shader, and you can just do it from within the node itself, from principal BSDF, as well as the alpha, the transparency of your objects. So if I'm here, for example, if I had actual transparent mesh, now you can actually change the alpha without having to add. Previously, you have to add a transparency node and then connect the two, and it's actually saving much more space. So yes for less nodes and more. The principal VSDF is getting buffy here, but it's a very nice addition. So it was added a few hours ago by a few minutes ago by Brecht van Lommel. So thank you, Brecht. Finally, I can turn myself invisible. Yes, you can, and disappear. Well, you can just disappear. Oh, right. Thank you for the segue. You can also disappear if you just select yourself and remove it from the outliner. The outliner finally has gotten some very, very nice additions. I'm just so excited. I'm going to open an actual blend file. It's actually pretty old, this one. I'm not sure it's going to work because I haven't converted this one to the new system. So it's from 2.7, so it has all the naming here, very convoluted, but it kind of shows how things will work in reality. So you have a collection for a character and for another character, and until now you could control. Let's try in an empty file first, just not to get a bit too messy. Yes. So the first thing you will notice is like the render icon is gone. What happened? What happened with the render icon? Let's make it bigger because it's epic. What happened to who took my render icon? The render icon now is here. Disable is not disabled, it's hidden by default, just to make things a bit more clear. Based on feedback from the community, the two settings that are more often changed are the view and the selectability. Sometimes people will get confused when they see the render icon and the view icon, and it's like you press the render and then it's still visible in the viewport, so that will be confusing. The render icon is basically for disabling on when you are rendering. So that setting is still available, but it's part of the new toggles that you can turn on and off for the restriction columns. So to bring it back, you just click on the filter here, pop over, you enable it, and then you have it. So that hasn't changed. The same way of working. However, what is new is that, remember that previously you have to like alt click on a icon to bring the screen icon that would actually hide it also when you're linking, when you're instancing in a different blend file. That is now, it was like a side effect. So now that has its own toggle that you can turn on, and then you can see, for example, when you're preparing your character for it to be linked in different scenes, in another blend file, in another shots, you can now see exactly what is going to be linked or not, what is going to be visible when you're linking it or not. So for example, the custom shapes, you don't want them to be visible, but you want them to be visible in here in this blend file, in the actual rig blend file, because you want to work with it. And the same with, I don't know, some helper meshes, mesh deform, for example. If you're using a mesh to deform your mesh with a mesh deform modifier, you want a basic mesh that is not visible when you link it, but it's visible in this blend file. So this is how you can control it, and it's so much better because it gives you, it's very clear, you know, you can see what it does. More columns. The extra columns that you can enable and disable are more for rendering, and they are actually per collection. So for example, if you have a collection and in this collection you want the monkey to be masked out in cycles, for example, this setting used to be in 2.7, used to be an option called mask. In 2.8 it is called hold out, and you will have to right click, view layer, and then you will have to press the holdout setting. For example, if you're in cycles, view layer, set holdout, or set indirect only. So it was kind of convoluted, and it was so annoying because you wouldn't know what exactly was set to hold out or not. So if you're preparing complex rendering, which I was doing recently for Spring and the Open Movie project, it was so much work to know which one is hold out or not, that you have to right click, see, right click, see, or remember. Now you can just click on it and you make them hold out or not, or indirect only or not. So pretty nice additions. Of course, you have so many columns now, but you're not supposed to have them all at the same time. For example, if I was doing lighting, if I'm a lighter, I would probably just disable the I will enable the linking, I would remove it. Indirect only, I don't want. If I'm doing lighting, I think with this I will be fine. Just see it in the viewport. So when for example, when I'm rendering, I want to see the preview, so I see my light and just can enable disabled. And then if I do want to do a render, I just disable it from here. So that is pretty neat. The other setting that is now exposed, is more clear, is the exclude or enable. It's basically when you exclude a collection, you're basically making it enable or disable. So now they appear with this little icon here that you can just toggle, and it will remove, not remove, but it will disable the collection for real. So if you have a bunch of objects that are super high resolution and you want to toggle them off temporarily, you can just do that with the toggle, and it's so clear. It's a checkbox, nothing more clear than a checkbox. You can also press E and Alt E for the shortcuts for exclude and maybe enable. Maybe we can rename it to enable and disable enable. So if you have many collections, you can just do E or Alt E, or you can click drag and you will enable them or disable them. So that's pretty nice. Everybody, it's okay here in the live stream. Is my voice is going out and I still have things to show, so sorry. that is taking so long, but it's so nice. Then Workbench, the Workbench engine, our friend, the Workbench, has new settings for the rendering and for the viewport. So you can change in per when you're rendering, you can change it to use the no anti-aliasing single pass, so it's like just the one, and it's called FXAA usually, and or the regular full ones are actually slow. And that's what else? Viewport. Oh yeah, some matcaps have been replaced. So if you use matcaps, and especially if you use this one, the zebra check reflection, now it's much better than what it used to be. It's now, for example, down here you can see this one is still there because I still use it, but actually they've been replaced. So now you see they're higher resolution and they are more correct. So if you are like actually just testing if a surface is actually like super neat, then you will see them here with this setting. And I think I covered all of that. The last topic is animation, which is the title of this video. It's not clickbait, I swear. Then here, let's open an actual animation file. And it's getting a bit chilly here. Maybe that's why I'm getting cold. So, or my voice is going away. So all right. First, a setting, an operator actually from the list of requests from the animators is that, for example, if we have a so let's see here. So for example, I have a this bone that it's getting grabbed around. This actually has a constraint. So I think the window is a bit too big, 1.2. It has a constraint. So usually when you're animating and you want the character to like hold to something, in this case, the berry, and you will add a constraint like a copy transform, and not a child of, but a copy transform. You will move it around and you will like change the influence on and off. The issue was that if you remove the influence, like if you toggle the influence off, you will see how the berry goes back to who knows where. That's not always very nice. If you want to just remove the influence completely, you want it to stay in place. So now there is this operator, this little X icon down here, that you can click on it, and you will see that the influence will go down to 0, but the position will stay. So now you see it's in place. So you can even like remove the constraint and it will stay there in place. Look at this boy happy with its with its berry. All right. Next, it plays really fast actually for having all the goodies on. The next feature is you can now push relax in regard to the rest pose. So when you have a character, maybe that's simpler to just explain it, is that when you have a character in pose mode, like in T pose, and you pose it once, you can now use the relax operator that takes the position of those bones between the rest pose and the initial pose that you have. Before, you will always need to have a pose before and a pose after. Now you only need one pose and it will move them between them. So that's if you're doing animation, you probably know how the push and relax setting works. So that's one of them. Then the spline IK, okay, this one I'm just gonna read because otherwise I'm gonna have no time for questions. So we can actually maybe read it together here. So the spline IK support using both original and volume preservation now has a new option that applies the volume preservation on top of the original scaling. So basically it's similar to the stretch through constraint and allows to easily rigging a stretchy chain that uniformly follows the parent scaling. If you understood any of these words that I said, is because you are a rigger. If you're a regular human being, you probably didn't understand anything. The drivers also now have an option for average scale when you're transforming. So before it was just scale, like the scale of the object. Now is the average. So if one side is bigger than the other one, or one channel is bigger than the other one, it will take the average. So that's also very neat. And the maintain volume, you can have the maintain volume constraint, which I can show you here in a bit before I run out of time, is that you add here maintain volume. You can now choose which mode you want to maintain volume with. Single axis will take only one axis to as reference. That's a new one. Then strict will be the current 2.8 mode. How it works, it will take the original scaling of the non-free axis, all of them, and then there's the uniform, which is the 2.79 way of working. So you can read the changes here, and I believe, yes, here in this comment. So pause and I was talking without sharing the screen. Very useful. So now you can actually see it. That's pretty much it with all the animation stuff. So let me quickly go back to the show by actually make it a useful live stream. Yeah, we can see the screen. Sorry, I just I can here. You can see this, and then you can screen capture or pause the video and read it again. All right, 45 comments, and I have 10 minutes, so wish me luck. Let's see. So thank you Lapisi for making the thread, first of all. Then Dead Dragon asks, hi Pablo, thank you for making the show. Thank you. Can you add make it so if we double press the G key, the transform tool will open with the arrows, and when we double press the R key, the rotation tool handler will open, and when we double press S, the scale handler will open. The thing is that actually double G, it's used already. For example, if you're modeling, you press G twice, it's actually vertex slide, right? And it's used in other places. So I don't think we can take those keys, but maybe it should be an option. If you always want to have the transform tool, maybe it should be an option. But yeah, could be interesting. You did this with the standard industry key map. Yeah, the standard, the compatible key map. This will make Blender faster to use, and you can add the shift to the gizmo so you can select the transform. Maybe it could be interesting. I'm not I can't think of the top of my head, but yes. Thank you for the thumbs up. All right, next question by Panic. Hi, first I would like to thank the devs. They are doing an amazing job. They are indeed. Here's my question. I would like to know how high is the priority for improving the weight paint workflow. For now, the viewport shading is not great. The wireframe is hard to notice. There's no shortcuts for brushes, and the undo stack is extremely slow. The undo stack being slow, that's an issue everywhere in Blender. It's not only for the weight paint mode. The wire being hard to notice, you can report the bug and we can look into it, but yes, please report the bug because it's like yeah, those things have to be fixed. There is no shortcuts for brushes, then they could be added. They could be also maybe a paper cut, so leave it in the developer dev talk forums. There is a UI paper cuts, which I think it's getting too long. This UI paper cut is 2,500 comments. I think we should just make a UI paper cuts section, like subsection maybe, and just make the threads there. So I will look into. I will ask the developers what they think, because it's nice to have like maybe a UI paper cut, just one thread bam, with these fixes. And oh, and then you actually did it. So thank you. I'm gonna check it out. Next question, said PK Go. Hi Pablo, wouldn't it be better to put the handle type and interpolation modes in the graph editor header? That would make it more accessible and easy to use. Handle type and interpolation modes in the graph editor header. So for example, if you're here and then use Shift F6. Do you guys use the shortcuts? I use shortcuts all the time for the editors. Graph editor, so if I here, so in the header you would put the T for keyframe interpolation and the R for, I think so. Yeah, actually could be interesting. Make a thread with a mockup in the in right click select, please, because it sounds like something could help a lot for all editors actually. Hello Pablo, Roman asks, you can slightly change the interface and simplify the work. Okay, I usually don't open links directly, especially when I don't have time, but you are a Blender development supporter, so let's see quickly. Simple texture addition. Yes, actually this one, the image settings here, that actually it's to new and open. That's a very simple addition that should improve things, so I'm gonna look into it. Thank you. Jay, Eddie, are there any plans for macros in Blender? The act of making string of actions executable. Yeah, that was planned in 2.5 era when the new API was introduced. That was a plan, but it hasn't been implemented yet. But yeah, it's one of the things that if like there are even macros for doing unit tests in Blender, so maybe they could be exposed a bit better. Next question. I've seen a lot of pro riggers trying 2.8, but it seems that Blender doesn't give a granular control over dependencies which you can run into easily. We know a lot of work has been done on the dependency graph. Yes, the rigging and character pipeline is one of the big topics for the upcoming 2.8 series versions. It's the Animation 2020 project that Ton likes to call. Lapisi, I just want to know, why is the poly count of that new haircut? It's way less than what I used to have. I used to have like flaps here, but it's a very low poly count and a 15 euro haircut around the corner. Buster Friendly. Hi Pablo, what do you think about the ability to edit animation paths? I love it. The characters here love it, and it's a yeah, it's been thought about, but I think the highest priority for motion paths in Blender is performance. If they would just work fast, just the same as now, but fast, that would already be an improvement, and then we could add editing of it. But it's one of the projects that is on the top of the list for animation. The guys here upstairs are like crazy about this, and every time there is a chance, it's like, hey, what can we improve? Motion paths. Frost Crack Studio. Why does Blender doesn't have a paint geometry? Maya had it back in 98. Why doesn't Blender have a tool like that in 1918? I mean, Vertex Paint, that's already there since probably before Maya. So yeah, that's been already for a while. Then, but yeah, Maya had this back in 98. But you can ask that to Maya too. Why Maya doesn't have a grease pencil tool like we have? We have it in the 2009. All right, next, GVGeo. And are there any plans for Blender 101 project? We got 5 startup files, but the 4 mentioned are missing. Yes, that just needs organization and just making them basically. So if you want to start a thread, maybe here in the Dev Talk forum to get the feedback from people, that would be awesome. That would save some time from the developers. That's really a project that the community can try to polish and get it nice, and then transfer to the developers to see what's missing, what it could be improved in terms of the things that Blender needs inside. Eddie Kristen asks, my question, how do I accurately my English track the bug count in 2.8? I have been going here, so let's see. Yeah, these are actually the bugs. You can filter by BF-Blender bugs. That is 1,355 is actually pretty accurate with the number of bugs, but so many of them need to be tried. So many of them are duplicate. So many of them are not from 2.8 now, but also from like years ago. So don't be like scared by this huge number. There you should also add like the high priority ones, and then you will see that high priority is only 23 for the time being. High priority is like super important for 2.8, and things that are like crashes, and yes, some of them are also glitches in specific hardware, like maybe really old hardware and people still are not aware that you need OpenGL 3.3 or those kind of things. So don't be too scared by this big number. But yes, we need help with fixing the bugs, and you know that the only way to help fixing the bugs is just throwing developers time to it. So this joining the development fund is a huge help, and also reporting them. And if you're a user and you don't have any or if you can't help with the development fund, just going here and just trying and just say, yes, I confirm this is what happens. For example, this 2017, I can say you can test bugs, and you are also going to help the developers that way, because they don't have to try them themselves. Then, or you can also help figure out what's going wrong. All right, next question, James. Hey Pablo, can we please get a way of unhiding the selected hidden objects without making a collection or clicking the eye? And hiding the selected hidden objects. Well, if they're hidden, they're not selected, but without having to make a collection or clicking the eye icon on every hidden object. Well, you have the Control H to hide the collection. I'm just clicking now everything, but there should be a way. Can't remember right now, but it should be a way. Next question, Giuseppe. What is a collection better than a group? Why is a collection better than a group? It doesn't have coordinates and you can't apply modifiers to it. What are the advantages of using collections instead of using groups? Well, the advantage is that groups don't exist anymore. The groups in 2.7, the way they were in 2.7, is that they were mainly for making instances. They were not really working as a group. A group in 2.7, they can't be nested. In collections, you can have collections inside of collections inside of collections, so you can nest them as much as you want. You can also instance them. If you want to instance, for example, this cube, put it here, you can drag and drop, and you are gonna make one. So you do have the coordinates like in 2.7. Then you can't apply modifiers to it yet, but that will be possible once we have the overrides that are coming in 2.81. Collections can can be linked. They basically they are a bit more versatile, but if you see it more of like from a distance, they are pretty much the same concept, a way of grouping your scene, of like organizing your scene. But okay, collections can be nested and many other features. However, that doesn't mean that groups may not come back. Groups as an actual group, something that you make a group of, they could come back in the future in 2.8. In 2.8 and later in Blender. So I don't see that it couldn't. They could coexist. Collections and groups could coexist in the future. Hola, Capitán Pablo. Why is that when I manually change sculpting shortcuts in 2.8, they will reset to default after restarting the file? That looks like a bug. Please report it. David asks, is it possible to add something feature which allow entire strip to make visible and hide like a mask? I would use masks for that. Yeah, I would use masks for that basically. And I'm already 2 minutes past. 5 more questions. You the ninja. Hi. 2 things. Possibility to turn off the endless grid. That is not added. And then try to bring back black shading for flipped faces. We need to see it without face orientation. Yeah, those, I think they could be like paper cuts. They could be assigned as paper cuts, and just see and discuss with the community here in the forums what would be the best way, the most 2.8-ish way of adding things back. Maybe the grid could be a user preference setting, and the same with the flipped faces. Maybe it could be a user pref or an overlay. There are many ways a feature can be introduced, so it has to be discussed. Number 4, Puffington asks, hey Pablo, this may be a paper cut or an unpopular opinion. I love unpopular opinions. Auto merge editing could be in the snapping drop-down menu instead of the options drop-down. The options drop-downs could be in the same row as snapping. I've been showing new users where it's located, and majority them are baffled as to why it's so hidden anyway. Away. We actually talked about it in the past for this setting, and yeah, it makes sense. The auto merge it's a bit hidden at the moment. It's an options here panel, and it could be in the same row as snapping. So here in the snapping. Yeah, the thing is that auto merge, like it auto merges, but not only when it's snapping, only when it's on top of each other. But it's really hard to get a vertex on top of each other without snapping, unless you're like super precise. So maybe it would make sense. There was a patch actually that it would move the auto merge editing here in the snapping popover. Issue is that it's good to see when it's active or not. So yeah, that's not an unpopular opinion. Actually, has been thought about in the past, but it's just where to put it, and that it's visible, and that it doesn't use an icon more, because then we don't have room here for anything. So yeah, unless you have the top bar on, and then in the top bar maybe it could be there because there's more room for activities up here, with or without top bar. All right. Number 3, Zach Mercury. Is there any chance we can have an effect strip creation using compositing nodes? An effect strip using the compositing nodes? No, because of the way Blender works, the sequencer can't shovel things too. Like the compositor can. There's like an issue there, the way they work. They have to be written for that, I think. But maybe in the future. But yeah, it would be awesome if they could talk to each other. I mean, they're in the same software, right? Next, Giuseppe asks, yeah, I just started to use Blender for professional 3D modeling for VFX, and I find a lot of inconsistency in its modeling tools. Can we improve it to take reference as Modo, which is one of the best softwares for modeling? That's not a question. That's like, just can you shovel these several €100 software into this one, which is the best one in the market? It's not the way to ask for features. I think it's just try to use Blender for a bit longer. I don't say that it's not inconsistent. It's pretty much very inconsistent, especially now with the way the tool system works. But there are users that you can see their videos, and they are so fast modeling in Blender. You can see the videos, time lapses on YouTube, and you see that they're super fast because of the shortcuts, because of because add-ons sometimes. So there are ways to make things fast, and maybe some of the way of Modo has for working, maybe they're actually better. But we shouldn't make Blender Modo. We should make Blender. Should make Blender better. We shouldn't shovel other software in, because other softwares also have their issues, and we don't want those in. We have to make the best modeler ever, because we we have access to the source code. Next question. That was the second last one. Said Corp, when do we get an animation called Quest? Ton talked about Animation 2020 in the past, but nothing has surfaced. because we are in 2019. It's getting all the connections ready, and the next code quest, especially for animation, is going to need, I think, more than just the community to support it. So it's also important to have the community, as in financially, but it also needs people from studios, like artists, TDs, that are like hardcore users of like other pipelines, and there needs to be a bit more than just developers for this time, for the animation code quest, for the character pipeline. So there will be work. There will be more announcements towards, I think, past half of the year, maybe, yeah, around that time. I think right now 2.8 needs to go out. I think things will be very busy during July. August is SIGGRAPH, so maybe after SIGGRAPH there will be things will be a bit more calm, and we can start thinking about the next step. But imagine the noise that 2.8 is going to make. So yes, don't worry, there will be updates in that regard. And that's all. I have so much, I have talked so much in the last few minutes, but I sorry that I cannot answer all of your questions. This one is the next one, but I don't have the time. I would like to know if there is a way to use tokens or custom environment variables. No, there's no current way of doing this, but if you're doing rendering, you could use Flamenco, which is built, like, it works really well with Blender, and it supports Linux, Windows, Mac, and recently had an update. Flamenco is the Flamenco.io. It's the render farm system that we use with the Open Movie projects forever already, and it's now being improved very, very much, pretty much, like very, very, very often, because of the Open Movie projects and because of the team growing here at the Institute. All right. It's been quite the show. I've been talking non-stop. I don't know if it's a haircut or if it's a what, but it's the Blender settings or what, but I've been talking so much. How did it go? How was it for you guys? Is it as crazy as it is for me to like talk non-stop, and is it just too much information? What is it? I will try to take it easier next week. If the developers stop adding so many features, gee, they don't stop. Thank you for staying until the end. I hope you had a great time. I had it. So let's make it happen again. Next week is the 20th of isn't it 20th of May already? Gee. Okay. Expect some awesome stuff, because according to the plan, the release plan, mid-May is when things start to get more like frozen and more focused on fixing stuff. So all these changes are gonna slowly go down in like crazy changes, like moving things around, and it's gonna be more up towards fixing things. So maybe then I can just have more people over and just chat about regular Blender stuff and not just development all day. So all right, I will call it a day. Thank you again for staying until the end. Thank you for hanging out here with me. It's super nice, super fun to have you over and to share the news that we get every week in this awesome, this so special time in history that we're living, that in open source software is growing so fast and so diverse, and it's just thanks to people like you in the community that keep it going. So thanks again, and watch out if you're wearing headphones, because we always go with style, with the oldie style. So in 5, 4, 3. Thanks again. I will see you again next time, next week, same place, same time. Bye-bye.